Previously on Story to Screen. I'm your host, Chris, and joining me tonight for our special double feature review for Big Hero 6 and Interstellar are Joshua Ling, Benjamin Curley, Ian Moffat, and Trey Balls.
Yay, last but not least.
Yes. Everyone is here. Avengers assembled. Oh, no. What was the term that we agreed to?
Group of people.
We never did agree.
Oh, okay. We never agreed?
The Fantastic Trey.
Now, Trey, come on. That's not fair.
That's what we agreed on, didn't we? I'm pretty sure.
Well, anyway, guys, let's go ahead and jump into our reviews as we divide ourselves and go into our separate corners.
Divide and conquer.
Yes.
The Avengers, divide.
Yes.
In the words of Linguini from Ratatouille, let's do this thing!
Let's do it! So anyway, let's go ahead and just go into our reviews of Big Hero 6 and Interstellar.
We used to look up in the sky and wonder at our place in the stars. Now we just look down and worry about our place in the dirt.
Go for main engine start, T-minus 10.
We must confront the reality that nothing in our solar system can help us.
9.
I've got kids, Professor. How long would I be gone?
8.
I'm asking you to trust me.
7.
Murph. You have to talk to me, Murph.
6.
I need to fix this before I go.
You have no idea when you're coming back.
5.
So what you just heard was the trailer for the new movie Interstellar. It's the 9th film from Christopher Nolan, actually. So the director of Memento, The Prestige, the Dark Knight trilogy, Inception, which I think is his masterpiece. Trey, we're going to start with you. So what did you think of Interstellar?
I thought that worldview aside, and of course basic plot, and it's science fiction, so obviously it rejects any notion of God or morality in general, but it was an excellent movie, and it was very complex, not from a story or plot point, but just as a movie, whether it's the visuals being complex, the effects, or the character development, the character relationships. It was just a really good movie, probably one of the best I've seen in several years.
Really? Wow.
The craft of the movie, the way they made it, the character interactions, the way they portrayed family and family ties. And I think the acting wasn't superb, though I can't really think of any, it's not like usually when you see somebody being bad in an acting role, you go, oh, I think this person would do better. I think that really sort of the script and the dialogue was a little lackluster. I think that sort of the message they were going for, of course, was preposterous. After the final reveal, the climax of the movie, where you sort of understand, what all they're trying to say about the human race and about humanity. That's really preposterous. But
okay, we'll get into that a little later towards the end. We'll talk about that. Ian,
it was a stellar movie.
The Punishers we are. I've been waiting on that.
Oh man, yeah. So, anyways, I'm with Trey. It was a fantastic film. Obviously, with anything of the science fiction genre, you kind of have to put some suspension of this. Just kind of ignore the
elephant in the spaceship airlock.
Yes. Oh, this God thing. Maybe that comes into play. But I felt like it kind of followed more of the European style of filmmaking, in that it wasn't like a nonstop thrill ride.
Yeah.
Like it was an intense film, but it wasn't like nonstop action. Something's always happening. It was a very well done, well thought out story that didn't focus around spectacle. Like, as much as I enjoyed Guardians of the Galaxy, it was, a lot of people pointed out, was very much a spectacle. Yeah, it was a spectacle-centered film, and I enjoyed it. It was a fun movie, but I feel like, Interstellar was a very well done film.
I really enjoyed this movie. I don't think I loved it, and I don't think, and maybe even like the reviews that it's gotten, the kind of mixed to positive reception that the movie has gotten, I think it's pretty much spot on. For the most part, because I do think it's actually 30 minutes too long, or maybe even 40 minutes, a little too long. I felt the length of this movie while I was watching it, so I think what I really liked about this movie was its ambition. I liked what Christopher Nolan was doing here on a filmmaking level. I mean, just the other day, I was watching some behind the scenes footage of the film, and it shocked me to see how much he was continuing to do the practical effects. I mean, like the spaceship that you see Matthew McConaughey and the rest of the pilots flying in, the little small one, that was actually a life-size vehicle. And in order, they didn't film it in front of blue screens, they actually had like a helicopter or a plane like flying it around in the air. Yeah, I was really impressed by that. I mean, and Christopher Nolan, he's still continuing to push the boundaries of what you can achieve practically. And that, and throughout this movie, I still had no idea what he was doing on a practical level. I mean, it still just astonished me of what he was able to do. I think you said something earlier, Trey, that the acting didn't really stand out as much. Is that right?
Yeah, the script was pretty wooden in some places, definitely.
Okay. I don't think there was really a standout performance like maybe in some of other Christopher Nolan's movies. Matthew McConaughey, I thought he was fine, but I've never been a big Matthew McConaughey fan, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. But I could have easily have seen anybody else in that role. The one person that did kind of stand out, I thought the little girl was very good.
Yeah, I read a lot of articles people were really praising her for her performance.
I think because she was in some of the more dramatic moments in the movie, with the limited amount of screen time she had, I thought she was really, really good. For positives, Trey, what did you like about the film?
It was very family-driven, family-oriented. Even though, I saw a video making fun of Disney and how nearly every main character in a Disney movie has either one or both parents are dead. And the video was lamenting that, but also making fun of it. And if you think about it, pretty much all heroes in movies have some sort of loss that they have to deal with.
Yeah.
And, of course, they have that in this movie with the mother being gone. And I did notice afterwards, it was interesting, the whole movie was oriented around the father and daughter when he had a son the whole time, and, you just didn't even care about that. You just totally forgot he had a son.
No, the son kind of just plays a back role, and then his whole mentality kind of gets a little weird when, during the second half, he kind of resents his dad somewhat because he wasn't there for him. Or something like that. He's confronting Jessica Chastain. No, my grandpa was the one who raised me, not my dad. When I was watching this first half of this movie, all the stuff leading up to the launch, I was getting kind of just the family dynamic. It felt like it almost felt like a mixture of Steven Spielberg and Signs to some degree. And that's another thing about this movie. It kind of was the most un-Nolan-like of the bunch. There's mystery, but it's not as bleak or as cold or as ruthless as some of his other movies. I mean, did any of you kind of get that vibe?
Yeah, I guess in terms of storytelling, it was definitely different because, I mean, obviously, Christopher Nolan's been around for a while, but, he really got super famous for the Batman films, and those are naturally dark films. Mm-hmm. So I imagine a lot of people went into it with that in mind. So yeah, it's in that aspect, it's different than the last few he's done. But yeah, I don't know.
What were some things that really stood out to you as some major positives?
The visuals were fantastic. I think that's. I mean, for instance, when they're getting out to Saturn in the first half.
Oh yeah, that is the one scene.
I mean, you can almost feel the cold and emptiness of space.
Yes.
I mean, I remember I actually thought that at the time. I was like, wow, that's exactly what I'm getting. And that was just incredibly well done. Like Trey said, I like the family aspect, and walking out of it, I was kind of thinking that I liked how they kind of explored the idea of how far a man will go to save his family, and in extension, mankind. Mm-hmm. And obviously, you had a contrast in the Dr. Mann character, but. Yeah, the visuals, the Hans Zimmer, of course, did a fantastic job on the soundtrack.
I don't know. I think the volume in the theater was a bit loud because it wasn't an Inception blah, it was an organ blah every so often.
It kind of felt like 2001 Space Odyssey. And there's a lot of 2001 in this movie, guys. I mean, this felt like a love letter to Christopher Nolan's love letter to 2001, a Space Odyssey, but... Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can't create a film like this without paying some sort of homage to 2001. But yeah, the music was a little loud at points, but I thought it really, when it wasn't noticeably loud, it really built up and really crafted a good atmosphere for the film. The presence and the silence. Any good film composer knows that silence can play just as big a role as a really stirring, composition. So I think Hans Zimmer, as usual, did a pretty good job with that.
Let's talk a little bit about Matthew McConaughey. First of all, I'm going to say this. I've never been a fan of Matthew McConaughey. For some
all right.
Even with that, I still haven't been a fan. But even even after coming out of this movie, I'm still not a fan of Matthew McConaughey. I think for me, McConaughey is just one of those guys that he was just so overexposed, and people were like saying like, "Oh my gosh, he's one of the sexiest men alive," and I'm like, and I'm a straight guy, and I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at him like, no, I don't see the attraction to this man. I don't think he's that attractive. And a lot of the other movies in his early career that he had done, I wasn't really big on. Like, I like Reign of Fire, but some of his other movies that he did, like Sahara and some other things that he did,
You didn't like Sahara?
No.
Oh man, I actually really like that am
You do? Okay.
Yeah, because
That's an excellent movie.
It's not like what am I thinking of? It's not like a Citizen Kane film. You can't walk into it with that kind of expectation, but
it's entertaining.
It's exactly. It's a good, fun flick.
Entertainment movie that you go in to be entertained by.
Exactly.
I like Reign of Fire. Did any of you like Reign of Fire?
I'm not sure if I actually saw that.
It's got Christian Bale in it. It's awesome. It's got dragons in it and all that stuff. But anyway, yeah, McConaughey, I've kind of felt like he's been he kind of wasted his prime on a lot of movies that just weren't really suiting to what I think people were predicting he could actually be. Like he did like Dazed and Confused, and some other movies that kind of showed like, hey, this guy can actually be something really great. And then instead of kind of pursuing those type of roles, he kind of wasted it on all these forgettable romantic comedies and all that stuff. So I know that he, in like, what is it, the past 4 years, he's been making somewhat of a critical comeback with like Mud and the Lincoln Lawyer and Dallas Buyers Club. Do any of you guys like Matthew McConaughey?
Yeah, I enjoy him. I think that Didn't really like him in Sahara, but I think he worked real well in this movie, definitely.
You liked him in this movie? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I personally think Matthew McConaughey is coming into his stride as an actor. Like, yeah, he really wasn't that great in his early career, but he was, first phrase that comes to mind is he was a sex symbol. And that's what they really continued to cast him as. And now that he's got established as a well-known actor, I feel like he's starting to really dive headfirst into these more serious roles and really testing out his acting chops. Like, you know, whatever people say, when you get to that level, it's not, you can fall off either side of the boat. And I think Matthew McConaughey is taking a good route. And from all I've seen, he's a pretty solid guy in his personal life.
Okay.
So, yeah, he had some not exactly winners, definitely did
Ben
the
Affleck thing, right? Like
did the rom-com thing, and got well known through that, and now I think he's really testing out his acting chops, as I said, and going for some more serious roles. So I personally am really looking forward to what else he's going to do. I think he did a pretty good job in Interstellar, as he really showed. I feel like, I mean, obviously it wasn't like the best performance ever, but he did a good job at kind of showing the tension that was there between staying with his family and then going out and saving the world. And then, the resolution and resolve, I guess that's the same thing. The resolve for, to continue in that mission, even if it meant sacrificing himself.
And even his family.
Yeah. So, I think it was not a subdued, but kind of almost an understated performance.
Okay.
Compared to, goodness, I can't think of anybody's names right now. What's her face?
Anne Hathaway.
Yeah, I felt like Anne Hathaway was she kind of had a little bit over dramatic take on it, while Matthew McConaughey was more subdued and more straightforward, which I think is exactly what the role needed.
Well, he was portraying the everyman. I mean, that's what Nolan said in interviews that he was trying to go for with Cooper. He wanted like an everyman type of individual that, he's basically a mechanic and a flyer, and and that's something that you would typically find in a common man, so to speak, who's in that field. I liked him in this. I don't think he was terrible in this movie. I think the moments that he really stood out to me were his reaction moments. Like the scene when he's watching the tapes of his kids and when they're growing up. I mean, when he bursts into tears to see his son turn into Casey Affleck, it's just funny to seeing that.
Yeah.
His scene when he just went into tears. Not only was that something that stood out to me as a performance wise, that was something unusual from Christopher Nolan's direction to get a performance like that. That's what really stood out more to me, because Nolan was able to capture emotion, genuine human emotion from a human being, and that's something I have never seen from another actor before.
Wasn't that sort of drawn to question his ability to direct? I'm just saying, if he's, directing people and he can't capture people's emotions, just saying.
I'm not sure I totally agree with you on that one.
You don't need emotion.
The only emotion he's got was like, I'm Batman, but no.
No, I think Batman, again, was not supposed to be an emotionally evocative film. It was supposed to be Batman. It was a dark film, and you can't get all teary-eyed in a film like that. I do think McConaughey had some good reaction shots, and I think it speaks well of Christopher Nolan that he can go from something dark and brooding to something as emotionally evocative as this film was.
I love the moment between him and his daughter just before he's about to leave.
Yeah.
And his daughter is, she's so torn up that she'll probably never see her father again, or that she won't see him for a very long time. And the fact that he's there, telling her, I'll come back, but he's still not too sure when he'll come back.
After, at least 2 people told him that he wasn't coming back and not make any promises he couldn't keep.
Yeah.
Just saying, I mean, come on, guy.
Yeah, and I love... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it reminded me a little bit of that scene from The Patriot.
Yeah.
Where Mel Gibson was leaving and his daughter who hasn't spoken at all. And obviously that particular scene concluded itself a lot better, but that's kind of what that reminded me of.
I even liked it when she asks him, "You have no idea when you're coming back, do you?" And McConaughey he doesn't know what to say. He's speechless, and then she cries again, and then McConaughey's like, "Oh, Murph, don't do this to me. Don't hurt me like this." That really got to me. That was a moment that really got to me in terms of a performance and an emotion. And a lot of people seem to criticize the movie for its. And they say like the sentimentality in this movie is manipulative. I bought it. I really bought it.
I mean, anything like that in a film is going to be manipulative. I mean, you want the audience to feel what the actors are feeling, et cetera, et cetera. So that kind of argument is kind of a moot point in my book. But yeah, it was a very emotionally evocative film, and like you said, I was totally in it.
Yeah.
You don't believe we went to the moon?
I believe it was a brilliant piece of propaganda that the Soviets bankrupted themselves, pouring resources into rockets and other useless machines.
Useless machines?
And if we don't want a repeat of the excess and wastefulness of the 20th century, then we need to teach our kids about this planet, not tales of leaving it.
One of those useless machines they used to make was called an MRI. And if we had any of those left, the doctors would have been able to find the cyst in my wife's brain before she died instead of afterwards. And then she'd have been the one sitting there listening to this instead of me, which would have been a good thing because she was always the calmer one.
The first 2 acts of this movie, I think, are pretty good. They're not completely perfect because I think they kind of I think they really, really drag on a little too long, but I love all the stuff prior to the launch, and then when they get into the exploration of space, that was some really amazing stuff right there. But the part that really bogged down for me was the 3rd act. I thought the 3rd act was kind of a little bit wearisome and kind of a little confusing. Let's go ahead and spoil it. Jason Bourne shows up for a little tiny role there. What was his whole thing again? Because he was trying to say that love can drive us to do inhuman things. Am I wrong?
No, I think he was talking about the instinct to survive.
Okay.
Anne Hathaway's character was the one that was doing the whole love thing.
Yeah. Okay. So his whole thing was kind of more this instinct for survival that, instinct for survival can drive us to do devastating things. Is that what he was trying to say? Something like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that in concept might work. I didn't feel it here though. I mean, yeah, you see him.
Well, that was the plot twist. That was one of the big plot twists is why he lied and things that he did to manipulate people, and that was what he meant by the urge to survive can make people do horrible things.
Okay. I don't know. I don't think Nolan. That's the problem with the 3rd act, and there's some other things with the 3rd act I don't really care for, but it was that particular moment that I didn't feel the danger of the situation.
I think it was cliche, When it did start happening, I was like, okay, that's believable. Of course, the villain has to do this or that, and of course he's going to try to take out the person that found out the secret, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that that was one of the few things that I pretty much, once it started out, I saw where it was going to go, and I wasn't too surprised. There were a lot of times where I was trying to figure out, what's the significance of the robots? What role are they going to play? Is this going to be, 2001, where the robots try to take over and kill the humans. Is it what's going to go on? And so that's why I thought that was going to be a big plot point, but that never happened. So when he ended up turning on the main character, I wasn't really surprised. Maybe a little bit, but then I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
And that's what I thought.
A little bit of the same for me, and it wasn't like a huge surprise. I think the little tussle, maybe a little cliche, but obviously that wasn't his original intention. But it was kind of a necessary plot point, because otherwise, Cooper goes home and then the movie's over.
Yeah.
But, okay, so what were some negatives that you guys had towards this movie? What were some things that you just did not like?
I guess I wasn't, like I said earlier, I wasn't terribly fond of Anne Hathaway's performance. Her little monologue about love felt a little forced to me, and I don't know. I
thought actually her and Matthew McConaughey were going to become lovers towards the end, but no, they didn't do that.
Well, obviously that's implied.
Well, that's implied in the very end.
Yeah, they didn't go all cliche and have them.
It was a good ending. I liked it.
Yeah. I thought it was a solid ending as well. It's kind of a toss up for the third act for me. I've heard a lot of other people say the same thing as you, Chris, and that it felt dragged out. Maybe so. I guess as Americans used to Michael Bay version of film, it's gonna feel dragged out once it gets to 3 hours.
Yeah.
But like I said earlier, I think it was Christopher Nolan was going for more of the serious, like, European film in which they're not really in a hurry, and they kind of want to take their time explaining things. And I felt it did add a little bit to the drama. I guess there were parts, especially that ending. Obviously, the whole science thing, anytime you walk into a science fiction movie, you got to take the science with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Science fiction is where the science is fiction. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people complained about the science thing, and I'm like, come on, seriously? I mean, it's like complaining about someone jumping too high in a movie with talking animals. It just doesn't work.
Water and surviving the fall.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's film. It's not supposed to be reality.
I think
Yeah.
Do you guys maybe agree that it was a little too long, or do you think it was just right?
I think the worst, I don't know, the worst part of it was where they edit it in such a way that you're like, okay, is this an intermission? They can start playing orchestral music so we can go up and go to the bathroom. I mean, there were two parts, at least, like you said, there's 3 different acts, where they had that, where you're like, okay, end of movie 1, please insert disc 2. That's the feeling that it had. And if they had edited it to be slightly different, then I think it would have worked better instead of, it felt like the whole first part of the movie, and then you had the launch, and then you had a whole second part, and then I forget what the second cut was. But I remember walking out of the theater thinking, wow, that was a long movie, but I wasn't thinking, man, they should have made it shorter. I was like, well, that was a, sort of a
big epic.
A substantial, epic movie. And, to go with the emotions and the characters and the visuals, that I think it worked out pretty well. I think that there are a lot of movies where very, very few times do I walk out of the movie thinking, wow, I've had enough of this movie. Most of the time I sort of, man, I wish there was more. But this time I was quite content walking out of the movie theater.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, speaking of the movie theater, which format did you guys see this in? Did you see this in regular digital projection, or did any of you see this in IMAX 70mm?
Is that even a question?
Yeah.
IMAX.
You saw it in IMAX?
Yeah, who doesn't go see it in IMAX?
Did you see it now? Which theater did you see it in?
AMC.
Okay, because I had to go to Buford because they were showing a 70mm print, What you saw over there is a digital projection.
Well, I don't know. I saw a friend of mine that took a picture behind the scenes of. He said it was the Interstellar IMAX version, and it was the big old roll of actual film. And I was pretty sure it was a AMC that he had. Anyway, maybe I'm wrong.
At the Avenue? I really wanted to see this in 70mm, so I called the one over there, and they said no, they were not going to be playing it in the...
Maybe it was digital.
What about you, Ian?
I'm ashamed to say that I saw it in the standard theater.
That's fine.
Yeah, I know. I really wanted to see it in IMAX, but I misread the times. And by the time, like, the next showing would have put me coming back home, 5 minutes ago. So, it unfortunately wasn't going to happen. I want to watch it again, and the next time I watch it, it's going to be in IMAX.
Okay, sure. Don't worry. I mean, I went to a 10:50 showing. It didn't start until 20 minutes later because the guy in the projection booth wasn't even there to start it, so we had a 20-minute delay. Watching it in 70mm format, it is really impressive. But I noticed the detail, the surfaces of the ships and all the fine little detail. It was amazing. Speaking of 70mm and digital versus film, where do you guys lie with the whole digital versus film debate?
I think that as a visual effects guy, it is not particularly too difficult. Well, I mean, it's difficult, but you can take digital and make it look like film. You just gotta have the right guy, put the right effects in the right places. I think that it is much better for directors to film digitally. I mean, it's like I remember watching the behind the scenes of The Hobbit, and I think that they were all filming digitally because of the 3D, and they were saying, you sort of pointing out the server where they're keeping all the data, and there says, if we were using film like we did, 10 years ago, we'd have about an acre's worth of buildings just to house the film that we're shooting.
Yeah,
was what he was saying, and that just goes to show you the scope. You're really restricted when you're having to buy and pay and transport and take care of actual film, not to mention the actual editing. But I think that digital is just the most practical way to go.
Yeah, it's more convenient.
And you can get digital to look just like film.
Yeah,
with the right people,
like Skyfall, because I know that was shot digitally, but they managed to make that look like actual film footage.
Well, obviously, digital has come a long way in the past 10 years, and I think nowadays it's not so much a debate as it is a personal preference.
Okay.
Because there are some films lately that have been shot primarily in film, and that was more of a director's preference choice. They really wanted that film look, but like Trey said, you can get that with digital. It's not really that big a deal. It's way more practical and a lot cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I guess I go with digital because it's more convenient. It saves time and money and all the other expenses that come with film. However, with film, I do give Christopher Nolan, J.J. Abrams, and Paul Thomas Anderson a lot more credit because they want to continue that old traditional look for film. They want to preserve that. And I think that's kind of very admirable for them to do that. And I think debatably, I think it does work. But, how much longer can it last is debatable, I think, because eventually film stock is eventually going to go out of print, and then I don't think people will be able to shoot anymore on film because I don't think people or studios and movie houses are going to be able to house that type of stuff. But I do give Christopher a lot of credit with continuing that trend because I look at so many of these other movies nowadays, and I can tell that they're shooting on digital cameras. Like, for example, when they released the trailer for The Avengers 2, I'm looking at that footage and I'm like, this is digital. Am I wrong in saying that? Like, I could tell that was a digital, that the camera was digital as opposed to film stock?
I think one of the things is one of the things that make it look digital is when they use a lot of CGI. Because, when you're using CGI, you do these really grand, swooping camera moves that are really, impossible to do with a helicopter or with the, cam and stuff. And so when you have all the CGI, you have to be digital because it's all digital, and then you have to make the digital look like film. And I think the thing about Interstellar and a lot of these other guys is they are trying to use more practical effects and even miniatures and such. That I read that they used a good amount of miniatures in Interstellar as well, where you can film all that using film, actual film, because it's all practical. But if you're going to try to use a lot of CGI, then you can't film CGI stuff with film. You have to in post make it look like film.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but I'm watching I was watching the Avengers trailer, and there are certain moments, and they're not even visual effects shot. They're just simple, normal shots of some of the actors, and I'm looking at the motion, the body motions, and I can tell like that's not film. That's digital camera. The quality is not really cinematic looking, unfortunately. So it kind of, for me, it kind of loses that cinematic, look to it, to some degree,
Well, that's also kind of a frame rate thing.
Yeah,
You can get that cinematic feel if you shoot at 24 frames per second,
Yeah.
I've done that with a couple music videos, and it turned out really well. It looked like I was shooting on film. But, these days, it's usually, especially with digital, it's usually 30 or even 60.
YouTube, the new 60 frame rate, yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, The Hobbit has been shot at, what was it, 44?
48.
48, yeah. So that lends itself to a different look as well. So, again, it comes down to director's personal preference.
And it's hard leaving everything. My kids, your father.
We're going to be spending a lot of time together.
We should learn to talk.
Emma, not to. Just being honest.
I don't think you need to be that honest.
I'm going to be very honest. I did not like the ending of this film. I thought after his encounter in that that ghost world, the place where he was able to send the messages to his daughter and all that stuff.
Spoilers, by the way.
Yeah. Well, we're already like 46 minutes in, so we can spoil the movie now. I actually thought after he came out of that place and he's floating in space, I thought that's where the movie should have ended. I did not like how conveniently that there's these spaceships flying towards him and they managed to rescue him. I did not like that. I seriously did not like that. I thought it would have been better if it just had him floating in space
to die,
or just leave his fate ambiguous. Just fade it.
I don't know. That would have been kind of depressing.
Yeah.
I think that would have been, but I think that would have been definitely Nolan. I think that would have definitely been Nolan-like if he had done that. That would have been really gutsy.
But it would have shifted it from this sort of family-oriented movie, as in the family relationship, to like you said, to be very dark and very, very, very different than the mood that had been set it up. Because the whole thing is, he's doing all this for his family. He wants to see his family again, but
it's going to be impossible.
Sure, he's willing to sacrifice himself. But then if you actually go, yeah, right, he's not going to see his family. You have no idea what's the deal with his daughter. So what? You sent the message to your daughter. You don't even know what that's going to do. And, left a lot of loose ends that people would have walked out and been, like, really upset going, I don't feel satisfied with the conclusion of the movie. Because really, that's important for stories. You need to have a solid conclusion instead of leaving everything open.
Yeah. I mean, like, you think about the movies that did kind of leave it open. Like, for instance, one of Christopher Nolan's other great films, Inception. I mean, that's kind of an annoying ending. It's like, is he still in dreamland, or is he awake?
He's still alive. He's still awake. I mean, that's kind of...
No, yeah, but...
or is he? You didn't see the couple, man. Yeah.
There's a lot of theories behind that. I think, like what Trey said, it's a nice wrap-up to the story.
The ending that, with him flying into space, trying to find Anne Hathaway and all that.
Yeah, and that was much, you sort of knew that he was going to make it, but then, it's still an adventure, and, sort of, I don't think that he didn't really settle his relationship with his daughter very well.
He settled his relationship with his son, actually.
Yeah, so I think they could have done better with that. Though I have to say I want myself a walking Taurus now. I was waiting for them to, shoot or kill somebody the entire movie, and then in the end, I was like, I want one of those.
I know, right?
I was like, I'm just waiting for them to open up that airlock, and then every time they're joking about it, I'm like, that's funny, but wait, is he being serious?
I mean, how much of an homage to 2001 are they going to do?
Yeah,
here?
that moment, except he gets crushed. He gets crushed there at the end. Now, critic-wise, towards the ending, critics have been kind of like debating what the movie is trying to say. Like, they don't know if Nolan was trying to say, like, love is a powerful thing, and it exceeds all things and something like that. It helps us to achieve.
No. The worldview is man is God ultimately.
Okay.
Yeah, basically we control our own destiny.
Yeah, we aren't bound by this dimension. We are above this dimension. We are above the world that we live in. We're above the universe. We control all things. We can go back in time if we want. We can change anything. We can control, like I said, our own destiny. We are God, pretty much.
Is that what you got through that scene when he was in that kind of like memory library place, whatever that was? Again,
you could sort of see, they start talking about them earlier. Like, what do you mean by them? You're talking about aliens?
Yeah, but that thing is kind of still open about who they are.
They sort of they figure it out for you, which a lot of movies they don't do that. They like to sort of leave it open and hanging. But they pretty much told you, oh yeah, this is us, and we're saving ourselves. We're the human race. That's the whole thing. As humans, we're not gonna. The whole poem they quoted was a big, forget you to God or to fate or to luck or anything. We're humans. We can do whatever we want. And, forget you. And then, of course, they quote it 3 times, which to me is bad writing if you have to quote some profound poem 3 times. But, that ultimately was what I got. I walked out of the movie theater and was like, wow, that was the climax of the movie. As much as they try to have, family and love and everything, it really ultimately was, there is no God, we are God. What's higher authority is there than man? And our future selves and our evolution to deity was pretty much what I got.
Well, I found it interesting when they said, like, more man was born on Earth. They repeated that line a couple times in the movie, but the problem is, well, how did are you saying something evolutionary, that we had an evolution origin, or what is our origin? I don't think they ever mention anything about evolution. At least,
well, that's because it's assumed.
Yeah,
it was mentioned a few times.
That was one thing about this movie. I was kind of worried. Is this going to be like a Prometheus type of movie? Like it was going to try to do the question of where did we all come from? Like it was going to be that type of a movie, and thankfully it didn't to some degree.
Where are we all going?
Yeah, so it's all about more about like fate. Ian, what did you kind of take away?
I think that the poem thing kind of helped develop the plot in a way, and kind of influenced and spoke on, I guess you could say, or was a commentary on Cooper's actions, and really humanity as a whole. I kind of feel like that. What's his face when he was dying? I mean, that's he kept quoting that, and that kind of lent itself to his actions, to explaining his actions, because he knew that, quote, the end was coming, but he didn't want humanity to just kind of go gentle into that good night, so to speak. He wanted humanity to, quote, burn and rave at close of day, rage against the dying of the light, instead of just not doing anything. So I think it was kind of a commentary and kind of supported the plot. And there was I think there were several references to evolution. Obviously, the big one was towards the end when they were talking about how humanity has probably evolved to be able to create this kind of thing. Definitely a humanist viewpoint.
Yeah, I could agree with you there. There was definitely some humanistic ideas going on here in the movie, but But at this point in time, I was getting weary by the movie's length, and I was like, okay, I'm trying to keep up with this, and I can't. I need this thing to shut off now. So...
There's not a planet in our solar system that could sustain life, and the nearest star is over 1,000 years away. I mean, that doesn't even qualify as futile. Where'd you send him?
Cooper, I can't tell you any more unless you agree to pilot this craft. You're the best pilot we ever had.
I barely left the stratosphere.
This team never left the simulator. We need a pilot, and this is the mission that you were trained for.
Oh, without even knowing it? An hour ago, you didn't even know I was alive. I mean, you were going anyway.
We had no choice.
How long would I be gone?
Hard to know. Years?
I've got kids, Professor.
Get out there and save them.
Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up, guys. So Interstellar... I would recommend it as a theatrical experience if you have 3 hours of time to spend.
Definitely, I recommend it if you go in knowing, being discerning. Like, you really got to discern any movie you watch to be able to sort of pluck out the world views and be able to see what's actually worth keeping mentally. I think that, again, it's not a movie I'm going to be watching every year, but I'm not even sure I'd personally buy the DVD, but it's definitely a movie worth seeing in the theaters for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're gonna see it, definitely see it in IMAX. Like I said, I want to go back and see it in IMAX because I feel like that would really lend itself to the scope of the film. Like Trey said, have to have some discernment with the worldview. Yeah. Again, it's a Hollywood film, so you can't exactly expect a Christian worldview to come through it, but there's stuff to glean from it.
Yeah, definitely.
On that aspect.
And that's going to wrap up this episode of the Story to Screen podcast for our review on Interstellar. Ian, Trey, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules and joining us joining all of us for the intro and then splitting into our own set of reviews. Hopefully we can do this again.
Yeah, man.
Well, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, have a good night and take care.